Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about how to pick the right trucking school. There's many different ways of doing this, many um, different types of schools. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. So that's what we're going to go over today. Um, so to find the right trucking school, you need to think of yourself. Think of your needs because there's a school that fits everybody's needs. There's everything from schools have flexible schedules, which if you go to school, if you have a family, if you have a full-time job, there's schools that will fit your needs with your schedule. Another thing is if you're a hands-on learner, there's a lot of schools that do more hands-on teaching than they do bookwork, and there's some that do bookwork more than they do hands-on. Um, Another thing is class size. So if you're anything like me, you need a smaller class size, more one-on-one time with the instructors. There's schools out there like that. The trucking school that I went to was Progressive Truck Driving School in Lansing, Illinois. They had small class sizes, more personal time with the instructors, so that way I learned how to drive a truck more one-on-one. Now, you got to understand something about trucking schools. They're not designed to teach you how to drive. Trucking schools are designed to teach you how to pass the test to get your license. So they don't teach you the ins and outs of driving or every maneuver that you're going to do when you're on the road. So they are going to teach you how to pass the road test and get your license. So if you need a smaller class size, if you need a flexible schedule, if you need more hands on education, that is what they do. They will teach you the way that you need to be taught. Now, another thing, when you're looking at schools, you you need to pick the school very carefully because there's um, different things that could happen depending on what school you choose. So there's two different types. There's a licensed school, which a licensed school is a certified by is a school certified by the state to basically teach you what you need to know. And in order to pass the school, you need to meet the U.S. DOT requirements, basically, um, for the industry to get your license. There's also accredited schools. Now, accredited school, like the one that I went to and got my CDL from, um, they have to meet certain regulations and certain policies in order to become accredited. Now, an accredited school, their policies and regulations are set by the U.S. Department of Education. So, what that means is that is honestly a better school to go to is if it is accredited by the U.S. Department of Education. Now, what does that do? If you have a certificate saying that you passed a trucking school from an accredited school, which will have a company stamp on it from a company called PTDI, um, that will basically PTDI works with the carriers and the trucking schools to make sure that everybody is safe. That assures companies, carriers, that you went to a school that is safe, that is accredited by the U.S. Department of Education. So that's another thing that you need to look at when you are um, looking at trucking companies to find the right fit for you. Um, Also, another thing is, do they have job placement? Not all trucking companies go to trucking schools. So what that means is that if you are at an accredited school, more than likely, not all the time, but more than likely, they will have carriers come into your school and talk to you about job placement after you graduate with your license. Like I said, not all schools have that. Most do. The school that I went to had that, but not all of them. So that's another thing that you need to look at. Another thing is the cost. Trucking school is expensive. Trucking school is not guaranteed that you're going to get your license when you graduate or if you graduate. So trucking schools are expensive, like I said. They cost anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. It all depends on the school and how good the school is. So if you're going to pay that kind of money, you need to make sure that you study and pass it because it is a lot of money. So that's what you can expect, anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. Now, when it comes to paying for a trucking school, there's two different ways to do it. Some schools offer a payment plan where you make monthly payments until the full amount is paid off, or you can pay up front. I paid up front just because I had the ability to do that. Not most people do. So it's expensive, but they work with you. So it is a doable situation. You also need to find a school that is they have a comprehensive program so you understand what they're saying. Because I know a lot of schools that they make it difficult for you to understand it. Because in the trucking industry, there's a lot of laws, a lot of regulations that you need to know as a truck driver, that if they don't explain it in a certain way, it's harder to understand. So when you're looking at trucking schools, you have to find a comprehensive program that you understand. And that is vital to going to truck school. So once you guys have that down, and you kind of find a school that you like, kind of don't like, you take the ones that you do like, and there's a couple things that you do. So the first thing is you look at the reviews of the school, because if you hear the testimonies and the reviews, you're gonna know if you like that school, if you're going to want to go to that school. Now, like I said, not all schools are the same. So with that being said, it's basically personal preference. So you look at the reviews, you hear the testimonials to figure out if that's a good school to go to. If more people are happy than unhappy, more than likely it's a good school. Another thing is you need to look at their equipment. When you look at equipment, if it's junky, that I wouldn't even look any further into that company or that school, because the way that they treat their equipment basically kind of teaches you or tells you how they teach, right? Because their equipment goes hand in hand with how they teach their school, right? Another thing is price. You got to look at the price, because a $3,000 school could not be as good as, say, a little bit higher price school. Where I got lucky was I found both. I found a good school, an accredited school with good equipment for a cheaper price. Now, that does not happen everywhere. So you have to understand that what what you need to do is look at all of the variables in your situation. When you're going through truck school, you cannot be worried about what everybody else did, because what everybody else did could not pertain to you. So when when you're looking into schools, keep that in mind, okay? Because there's a lot of variables when it comes to picking the right trucking school. Because if you pick the wrong school, it could potentially hurt you in your career. Whereas if you pick a better school, an accredited school with good equipment, you will be more successful. Because I can tell you from personal experience, when you go to a carrier right out of school, they do look at your certification from that trucking school. And if you show them a certificate from an accredited trucking school, you will get hired before the next guy that does not have an accredited trucking certificate. So you need to keep that in mind as well. And another thing is, don't be afraid to ask them for a tour. Tell them you want to look at the equipment, you want to look at their classroom, you want to look at their facility, you want to talk to some of their instructors, because not every instructor is the same. So you want to physically see all aspects of that school. Now there's another thing, the last thing here, that people don't really talk about. So since we talk everything trucking, we're going to talk about it. Here in the last few years, FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and DOT, they have implemented something that is more people's opinion. There's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just how do you feel about it? So the industry is moving more from manual transmission trucks to automatic trucks. So what they did was, these trucking schools are buying these automatic trucks, and they are now putting restrictions on people's licenses that say, if you go to a trucking school and they have only automatic trucks, they have no manuals, or you test on a automatic truck, they will put a restriction on your license that say you can only drive an automatic truck. You cannot drive a manual truck. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these trucking schools, and that's why I said you need to look at the equipment. Because if you want to drive a manual truck, you do not want to go to a school. You don't want to go to a school that only has automatic trucks, because then they will put a restriction on your license that says you can only drive an automatic truck. What are my feelings on it? I don't agree with that. I think everybody should have the choice of, do they want to drive a manual or do they want to drive an automatic? I've been trucking for 10 years. I grew up in the industry. I had, on both sides of my family, on my dad's side and my mom's side, truckers. So I'm old school. I love the manual truck. I love the manual transmission, shifting gears, hitting the clutch. That's just how I grew up. So always keep that in mind, that there is no guarantees in this industry. This industry flexes so much with everything from freight to FMCSA and DOT, their laws and regulations that go up and down, and it's hard to keep up with sometimes. But I'm not saying that this is a bad industry. I love trucking. I love everything about trucking, the diesel fuel smell, all of it. But it's not an easy industry. And what I mean by that is, you know, we're away from home. We're away from our families. We're away from our friends, and it's just it is what it is. You're gone all the time. So just keep that in mind. We'll end this video here, and you know, we'll see you in the next part.